Hello, YouTube viewers. Welcome to my show, Future Friday. In today's episode, we're going to talk about satellite internet, a overview. Basically, it's no longer about Starlink alone. So, what is the logic behind this? Why the heck so many people are excited about this? Well, we want 100% coverage. How many times have you drove somewhere where like no mobile tower? How many times you have reached our old relative and you're like, "Yup, there is no internet here," and you cannot even pay for it. So how many times that have happened? People no longer want that, and not to mention if you are on a cruise ship or an aircraft, you are out of coverage, so we no longer want that. Now, it's not something that is completely science fiction. We have something similar as that. Basically, we have satellite navigation. As of now, there are four satellite navigation systems. We have GPS from America, we have GLONASS from Russia, we have Galileo from European Union, and we have Bindu from China. So four satellite constellations exist right now which can transmit your location exactly to where you are. So it's not something that unheard of, that planet-wide coverage of something. We have it, and we had it from like 1970. So it's not something far out. And on top of that, even in young countries like India, DTH became a reality. Basically, it uses geostationary satellites to broadcast television signal to all over India. Now it has worked successfully with every country, and I'm talking Brazil, Pakistan to Nepal and all that jazz. Basically, it's quite successful. It's something that we are familiar with. It's something that works. It's not something far out. It works. So on top of that, people want to extend this to the next level, like navigation system. Yeah, it's useful for commercial users and trade and all that, but for connecting people, TV is the next best step. Then what is better than TV? Internet. So we wanted to push it to the next level, and we no longer want geo limitations. Basically, oh, you are in this area, so, sorry sir, we do not provide connection. Now it has happened to me, like even in Bangalore, basically, where I was like, sir, you are on this road, so we don't have fiber laid down there, so we have to charge double that and all that jazz. So we no longer want. We're like, dude, just, I will pay, give me internet. We want that. Now, how the heck this will work? I mean, if we had satellite technology from 1970s, why the heck we have not done it yet? Well, you have to understand it this way. There are many things that had to align up perfectly for this technology to become a reality, where somebody can even imagine that they're gonna have basically satellite internet, a proper internet. I'm not talking military internet. It's already exists. Like, and heck, you can even pay for it. You can get it yourself, but it's not very useful, so to say, for commercial use. It's like, yeah, if you have nothing else, like on an oil rig or something like that, yeah, it's better to have something. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking your Joe, average Joe kind of scenario. So first thing we learned is basically you do not want to be in geostationary. Geostationary gives you excellent coverage, so you can have like as few as like three satellites and cover the whole planet. Excellent coverage, but horrible latency. And latency is not only bad for quote unquote gaming, and you're like, hey, I only watch Netflix, it doesn't matter too much. Latency allows basically confuses your server in terms of basically thinking there is a denial of service attack or some other intrusion. So many security system will flat out stop working if it detects latency that low. So you have to have load. And not to mention, we utilize data communication for communication also, like I'm face to face, FaceTime, WhatsApp calls and all that jazz, and those require low latency. And why the heck it's latency? Because even though light is fast, it's like light speed, it still has to travel 30,000 kilometer plus in one way, then have to go to a ground station, that is 60,000 now, then it has to come back to the satellite again, then be bounced back to you. So that's like 30 into 4 times. So that's a ludicrously far, even for light. So you end up with latency of like 600 millisecond, or sometimes even whole second latency. That is too long. That is like dangerously long. So we learned that, okay, it works, technology is there, it works, but what if we close it, brought it together? So instead of going to geo, we brought it down to MEO. Now that is the same range of some military satellite service providers, and that is the core use, basically core base for navigation system. That's where your GPS and all that jazz is. But then again, people are like, okay, that's good, but not that good. What if we brought it closer to Leo? Now this is the granddaddy here. At this point in time, we are talking about the range, basically the height of bare minimum of 1000 kilometer to 5000 kilometer. Some satellite constellation wants to go below than that, but that's the zone, basically below 5000. Now benefit of that is so close that you can expect, even with like every satellite has to bounce a signal to one point to another, then again it has to go to ground station, again it has to go through undersea fiber cable to the server, and then it has to come back again. Even accounting for all those, you can expect latency of of around 25 to 30 millisecond, and that's good. Like if you have reliable, like it's if not fluctuating too much, if you can have 20 millisecond of latency, that's good. Like that's more than good enough for video call, voice calls, even gaming. That's more than good enough. Yeah, it will be better if it's low, but again, that's good enough territory. That's like, yeah, unless you are nitpicking, you will not be able to find a flaw with that. So that solves one of the first physical hurdle. Then we talk about the coverage. Now again, the further you are, the better the coverage, but what happens if you get very close? Your coverage becomes basically useless, because a LEO satellite is only in the sky for around 5 to 10 minutes. So how the heck you solve that? You put hundreds of them. The constellations that we are talking about here starts with 1,000 and goes as high as 12,000 or something like that. So we don't have to worry about coverage. We're going to have overlapping coverage, so even if one satellite fails, the other two satellites will pick up the slack without you even realizing it. So thousands of satellite for that coverage. Then okay, then becomes the issue, how the heck you gonna communicate from satellite to satellite? Because if you use radio and you are using radio in vacuum space, so signal degradation would be very little. It will interfere like there is no tomorrow with every other satellite. So how do you solve that? You do not use the radio wave. Radio wave is not designed to carry that kind of bandwidth. You go optical, you go to laser. Now laser bandwidth, think of this way, that if I give you same amount of mass, basically, okay, this many kilograms, this is the volume, 1 liter, 1 kilogram, and I give you a power limit, like okay, you have 100 watts. Radio can barely give you, let's say 1 gigabyte per second, barely. Laser is like 1 petabyte per second. So lasers have reached a point where it's like practically useful for backbone communication. So satellite will not cause interference with everything around it, and it will have very low latency, high reliability, and high redundancy laser communication from one to another. So that way satellite has a good quote unquote net or a web around it that gives it a very good access to the global network. Then we come to the another aspect. Okay, satellite is talking to satellite. That's not internet for us. Internet has to reach us. How the heck it's gonna reach us? Well, another technology that happened in Cold War era is what we call phase array. Basically, you're gonna have a flat disk, not disk, basically something flat. Let's say you have antenna is like this, and you will expect your signal to go everywhere. That's true. So let's say your signal vector is like this, but here's the phase shift allows you to have hundreds of small antenna and create constructive interference and destructive interference. So what does that mean? Simply this way, this is your antenna, this is your vector, you can steer it like this. Anywhere in three-dimensional space you can steer it, and it will not cause interference in anywhere else. So not only that makes sure you're not interfering with each other, also makes it if you have multiple basically antennas, they will work together without destroying each other. And that technology has become cheap enough that now it's in Wi-Fi 6 and in your mobile, which has 5G. So again, that allows radio communication to be much more efficient than any previous generation. So that is how we're gonna solve ground to satellite communication. Satellite to satellite communication is taken care of by lasers. And then okay, question becomes, okay, so far so good, but the biggest hurdle so far was rockets. Rockets have also started to become reusable. So that unlocks the whole, like, unlock this to become next level player. We have reached that. So this is the workings of it. Now, who are the quote unquote players in this? Like basically, who is trying to bank on that? First, the biggest and the furthest, basically position number one is SpaceX Starlink, because they have already launched 3 satellite missions, and they have already starting to form a constellation. Their constellation is already working again in demo testing, but at their current rate of growth and development, they might start to give complete planet-wide coverage. Again, depending if country allows it or not, they can give complete planet-wide coverage as early as 2023 or 2025. That's quite good. Then we come to Blue Origin. Now Blue Origin has one advantage that SpaceX does not have. SpaceX is always running low on money, while Blue Origin is always swimming in money, simply because Jeff Bezos makes so much money from Amazon Web Services. They're like, yeah, 1 billion a year, you just take it and go. So they have the backing, and not to mention, even though they are a bit slow, a bit laggy behind SpaceX, they already have developed the engines. Engines have gone through the testing, and their engines will be used with ULA's new rocket. So they also have NASA approval and all that jazz. So they are also not something completely behind. Then we come to the third player, OneWeb. I have no idea. Basically, I researched it. It's not that detailed, and I was not satisfied with it. But there are still something serious, and they can actually pull it off, and they might be integrating and working with basically Virgin Galactic. So they are right now in third position, and there are some other player also who wants to come in, but right now these are the one. SpaceX is already starting to do it. Blue Origin will soon reach by 2030, and OneWeb, I have no idea. So what about the cost? Basically it's a ludicrously large capital investment. Now people are comparing this to every other satellite phone system. Now all of them went bankrupt. It's like, Rolls Royce went bankrupt time and time again. It's like Lamborghini went bankrupt again and again. It's these kind of services, it does not work even though there is a certain demand for it. Like oil platform, they're not gonna pay you like, $10,000 per minute for a call. It simply it's not gonna work out. So even though this has been tried, it has failed many times. Now people are saying now it's cheap. Yes, it is cheap, but relative to what? Relative to a ludicrously expensive old system is cheap. Yes, absolutely true. Because back then it was like, oh, $120 million. It's a bargain satellite launch. Now they have $20 million satellite launch. So yeah, that saved them 100 million, but still $20 million. $20 million is so much that you can lay down fiber for like 5-6 towns, and that is only one rocket launch. And when you're talking about SpaceX, even though they are launching 60 plus satellites in per launch, they need hundreds of these launch. So you can literally cover every single town with fiber, with high quality, high reliability fiber without even thinking about it. And not to mention, you don't even have to touch big cities because they already have it. So in terms of capital investment, it's a huge chunk. Now there are hopes about SpaceX, because SpaceX mathematics suggests they can make upwards of $30 billion in profit if it works out. So they have a probability of getting their money back. Now it's not gonna be cheap, neither in terms of data nor in terms of installation for you, because you still the early data says like you have to buy something the size of a laptop and you have to put it on top of your roof, because again a satellite, while phase shift array allows you to have a much higher signal integrity, is still not gonna be good for your mobile phone. You're gonna have basically quote unquote receiver, and it itself would be a phase shift array, because again internet is a two-way communication. So it's a big puppy and it's not going to be cheap. So again, that alone will be expensive, but people are suggesting it should be like price of a low budget laptop. So do not think it's like, oh, it's super cheap, I'm going to pay for it. They might forfeit the cost in the early adopter phase, same way Sony launched PlayStation 3 on a loss. So that could happen, but do not expect this to be cheap. Now another aspect, now when you talk about satellites are long lived devices, especially geostationary. They are like, once you put there, you can expect it to work for 10 years or 15 years. But when you're talking about something as close to Earth has basically lower LEO satellites, they do not last. Flat out, they do not last. If you leave them without any issue, they will fall out of sky in 2 years. And even with engines, even with ion engines, their expected lifespan is very low, 5 to 8 years, and that's best case scenario. So again, running cost would be high because they will be running out of satellite very quickly. Then what about the return on investment? That is the main thing. Otherwise it will be the same story as like, Rolls Royce, they went bankrupt, or this company, they went bankrupt. So the return on investment is long. Like do not expect return on investment for this puppy to be anywhere near, because if return of investment happens properly, then you can expect the services prices to drop, because company have to make the return on investment. Once they make that, once they are in profit phase, they can be like, okay, instead of making a lot of profit, let's make a little bit profit, so we get much larger client base, then we're gonna increase our profit margin. But you have to make sure you complete your ROI, otherwise it will be another bankruptcy story. Now question is, can it work? Well, before you sell any service, you have to understand, is there a demand for that service? If do people really want it? Short answer, yes. Net demand is very high at this point in time. You can say it's like a commodity level. We want it, we need it at this point in time. So in terms of demand, that is what SpaceX is banking on, that people need it at this point in time. So they do not have a shortage of basically demand. And another aspect, many times we could have done that, like, there is always a demand for a high speed railway, but nobody could have done that because technology was not there, unless basically Japanese people figured it out, Shinkansen. So again, you have to understand it. Okay, demand is there, do you have the technology to figure it out right now? Not like 10 years from now, right now. Yes, the technology is there, because I said phase shift array was developed in basically Cold War. That's how far I was able to track it for ICBM tracking and all that jazz. And again, now it's so cheap, it's in your Wi-Fi 6 router, it's in your mobile phone with 5G. So it is something that has come down in price enough that you can expect like hundreds and thousands of these. So that's possible. Laser background, again we are relying optical more and more, and heck, I have optical connection in my house. It's not like a big box somewhere else. No, in my house I have that. So again, optical have also improved, lasers have already improved. Heck, NASA did a laser test from Earth to Moon for 600 Mbps. So we got this, we got this. And in terms of engineering, okay, let's say all of these things are possible. Do we have the experience to do this? Well, yes, the rocket landing is the biggest hurdle in this. we have done this. Like if SpaceX says they're gonna launch each of their booster 5 times, they have experience to show that yeah, we have done that. Now we know for a fact, again, their engines are rated for 10 use cycle. They use 2 3 in testing itself, so they do not never get like complete 10 use. But again, even booster wears out every time it's going through the atmosphere and landing, reheat and all that. So they are expecting 4 5, and if they upgrade the engines to, let's say, basically Raptor engine, they might get, even on the same chassis, they might get more oomph out of it. So engineering has matured at this point. SpaceX can say, hey, we have a reusable rocket. It has worked. We got the data. We know how this works. We know how to recycle it. We got everything done. And we have something even better in the works. So they got it. So what about the chance of success? Now again, I made a video about Starlink in detail long back, but my views have changed recently simply because I've realized it's much more politics are involved into this than I originally realized. Because back then I did not knew that China can simply block your satellite, and you're like, how the heck they're gonna block the satellite? Again, if you have to brute force it, you can simply have some ground station that are sending white noise into the satellite. Satellite have to shut itself, otherwise it will fry its antenna. It has been done in basically past to block a spy satellite, and it has been done today also. Whenever it's like some country like, hey, whose spy satellite is, they do not know, and no country is like, yeah, I don't know whose satellite. Then you're gonna use white noise to block it. It can be done. On top of that, they can fly because they are private companies. USA is liable for them. So China can simply say it's a declaration of war if you turn it on in my airspace. So everything above China's airspace, they have to shut it down. So flat out, do not. China is out of the map. Now, why is that important? Think of this way: China has the world's largest population, so it's important. If you have customer, you're gonna have customers in China. So removing that removes 1.5 billion there directly. What about India? Again, India has changed drastically in past few years, specifically because of Geo. Geo changed India randomly, like nothing, and bam, whole 4G coverage in the nationwide 4G coverage before anybody even thought that was possible. We had 4G in the same pace as every other country. Only country that can tangibly say, hey, we had better coverage was Japan. So that was quite amazing. And then Jio started to give fiber to the home, which I have right now. And even though it's expensive, it started a revolution where now there are multiple companies that are giving fiber, and many of them are giving cheaper fiber. And these fiber to home, better latency than any satellite, and some of them have low latency as 5 milliseconds, which satellite simply cannot give you. And they're cheaper and does not require like 40,000-60,000 rupees of basically a satellite receiver dish. And on top of that, government might simply ban it. It's like, no, we don't want you, bye. So that's all another issue. Now these two, if you block this, you're talking about around 3 billion people on the planet Earth that is out of your purchase range. That's a big oof. Then what about USA and European Union? Now USA and European Union, while they have very heavy data users, they are already reached a saturation point. So what does that mean? That simply means if people needed internet badly enough, sometimes people have started their own optical run. They're like, dude, I will pay you for optical run, just give me connection. So like if you watch Linus Tech Tips, they have 10 gigabyte connection to the basically big exchange. So if people need it badly enough, they have the luxury. And if SpaceX really starts to come in, it's like, we're gonna replace the crappy and bad connection. The crappy and bad connection providers, basically AT&T, Verizon and all that, they have to spend a fraction of what money SpaceX has spent to fix their network and actually give good connection. So they can literally kill SpaceX before they even get a per rocket launch. They can be like, okay, this town, cover this town with good optical system. Done. One rocket launch will take care of like one town. Another rocket launch they take care of it. By the time SpaceX have like 60 launch which they need, they will be like, yeah, 100% of places coverage. And the places they don't have, they will have Y max connections. So again, there is a very serious competition in that. Same with European Union. Then we come to the only untamed 1 billion people, that is Africa. Now Africa is quote unquote untamed. Basically Africa is not one conglomerate same way Europe is under European Union. So they may have like, oh, Egypt might say, okay, come on in, or Brazil simply say, shut down your satellites. So it's no longer as easy as I thought it would be. Like, oh, satellite internet is gonna work everywhere. Again, the cost is very high. The receiver cost is very high. The data cost would be super high. And on top of that, it's no longer like, you can expect connection everywhere. That was the dream, that it will work everywhere, but it will not. Simply, it will not. So chance of success is no longer as a clean cut as it used to be. Now, again, in USA and Europe, they can still become successful, especially in USA, because the Verizon and all that, those are people are like flat out evil. They are no longer longer like lazy and like bloated. They are evil at this point. They are like trying to scheme people out of money. So yes, they might simply, even if SpaceX actually acts as a competitor, they might not improve their service. That might give SpaceX the footing that they need first customer base in order to grow. So okay, it could work. It's not impossible to work, but it's not as easy as I thought in the first place. So this was my presentation on basically satellite internet. I hope you liked it, learned from it, got a better view of a bigger picture. I hope you, in that case, you click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I'd urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me your extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.